Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the United Service Institution Strategic Dialogue, your one-stop shop for comprehensive national security issues and geopolitics. Over the past few years, there has been a lot of talk about restructuring the Indian Armed Forces, and foremost among the proposed changes is the process of theaterization. For this, we have today with us Major General R.S. Yadav, who is a veteran with 38 years of experience. Post-retirement, he has served as the Vice Chancellor of a university and is a distinguished fellow at the USI. General Yadav has written extensively on the process of theaterization and was the point man for a recent DRDO project for a digital decision-making tool for a theaterized environment. So, without much further ado, let's get to it. General, we have 75 years since independence and we have partaken in 5 wars with a near perfect record. Why are we looking towards changing the functioning of the armed forces?
Okay, let me first thank you for getting me over for this strategic dialogue and greetings to all the audience. You see, the armed forces of any country are the instrument of last resort. So their capabilities and their functioning has to be kept sharpened at all times. Now let's consider as to why do we require a change. While it is so good to hear that the Indian armed forces are the professionally most competent armed forces and they have seen maximum action during their existence, but we must also realize that there are successes and there are sometimes some failures. So if you recall that post-Kargil, having fought almost 5 conventional wars, there was a need felt that there is a requirement of bringing about some change. So there was a Kargil committee review and there was a group of ministers report, and both of them said that there is possibly a requirement of change, the major factor being that there is a requirement of integrating the 3 services. I will leave it at that at the moment. The second point is that in contrast to everybody across the globe, India is the only country which faces 2 major adversaries, and that too also with a disputed boundary. And the boundary issues are such that I don't foresee personally that we can have a solution to it in the foreseeable future. Therefore, our challenges will continue to remain. And we have to change with times as per the capabilities of our adversaries. You already know that while Pakistan may have been conventionally inferior to us, but China is now emerging as a global power. And therefore, we have to match up to them, and therefore there is a requirement of change. And the third aspect which I like to mention is that the character of war has undergone a change. Apart from multi-domain, hybrid, it has gone totally high-tech. And therefore, if we do not restructure and organize our armed forces as per the requirement of the day, it might not be good. So therefore, I feel definitely a change was in the offing, and if we are undertaking it now, it is good for the nation.
Alright. So, General, what is theaterization, and could you please explain the concept and the likely benefits of it?
Okay. Now, theatre word literally, it means a portion of a land. And we connect this word to military, it means that you are entrusting the responsibility of a particular geographical area to a particular commander. It helps in 2 ways. You would have heard, read that unity of command and synergy of effort are the 2 war-winning factors. In theaterization, we are putting both these principles to get things together. Like in the entire geographical area assigned to a commander, you are making the commander fully responsible and fully placing him in command of things. The second thing is that whatever resources you are allocating to him, he is absolutely at freedom to utilize the same in the best possible way. So theaterization is a concept where you are bringing both the major war-winning principles together. Now let me go on to the next step is that what are the different models? Is it a single model or there are different models? The first model is that there are basically two models. One is the geographical model, yes, and the other one is a functional model. Let me elaborate. Geographical model is that when you assign a piece of land to a commander to be responsible for. So now let's take the example, you put the forces and resources under a commander to fulfill his responsibility. It got first implemented by the US post Second World War, in which, because USA does not require any armed forces to defend anything in their own country, yes, but they require to have the security seen across the globe. So over a period of time, they have developed 6 geographical commands. So whether it is the Central Command, whether it is the Pacific Command, whether it is otherwise, so they adopted this principle of geographical command. The examples I have given you, 6 commands there. The latest to adopt, yes, this particular model is China. They have also now changed over to 5 theatre commands. The Western Theatre Command facing India. And in India also there is one example, the Andaman and Nicobar Command, which was formed on the Andaman Islands, putting together the elements of all the 3 services. The second model is functional model. Now, all the things which are scarce in numbers or the resources are not unlimited, we tend to put them together based on their functional capability. So it means like strategic forces, special ops forces, cyber, and all these types are scarce. They can be put centrally and they can be given on requirement basis to the geographical commands. So whether it is the US Strategic Command, Special Ops Command, the Cyber Command, and in China also. So whether it is the Strategic Support Force, whether it is the Rocket Force, and in India too, the Strategic Forces Command is an example of this type, right? And in relation to this, I would like to point out that both the models have seen success. It gives benefit in the ops, logistics, administration, everything. And the 2 models also bring out one more fact. US has its theatre commands as expeditionary forces. It means forces which are deployed outside the country. And China has now come up with a model which is endemic. It means they have put the theatre commands within their own geographical area to do the responsibility. It means the model is good for both the type of forces. It can evolve from one to another as required. So it's a flexible model, and I think if India is progressing towards it, it's a good thing.
Okay. So there has been some resistance to theaterization from the stakeholders. What could be the possible reasons for that?
You see, change is detested by everybody.
Yes.
So that's a very common thing, that whenever you want to make a change, there is a problem. And the second thing which I can say in generic terms is that the forces always work on the principle of elitism. Army says, I am good. Air Force says, I am good. Navy says, I am good. And within the army, the infantry says, I am the leading element, and all these things happen.
Yes.
So, we after independence followed a single service strategy. It means all the 3 services were developing in their respective silos. And it is going on till now. So, over a period of time, they have developed their own methodologies, their own rules and regulations, their own doctrines to fight and everything. So when you want to bring the things together, there will definitely be some resistance. There is a lot of things which might have got talked in the environment, but it's a matter of time, I feel, that when everything will need to be resolved and come together, yes, for the benefit and the larger good of the nation.
General, you've spoken of the approach and the steps to take according to that approach. How many theatre commands would you recommend in such a situation based off of your thesis?
Okay, I think it is well known to the environment, and it is being often talked about, that while we have only 2 major adversaries, Pakistan and China to the north. But we have 17 commands, 7 in the army, 7 in the air force and 3 in the navy, which are taking on these two adversaries. So this is one point which has come to the focus, that so many people against two, how is the integration being? So that is the underlying point as to why theaterization is required. And as I said in my initial response, that unity of command is very important. So therefore, I would feel that as of now, we have 3 frontiers. One is the western frontier against Pakistan. We have the northern frontier towards China. And we have almost 7,500 kilometers of the coastline where Pakistan and China can also come, but there can also be any number of maritime threats developing in the future. So therefore, I feel that having 3 integrated theatre commands should suffice, because having more than that, we will get back into the same. So I propose a theatre command facing Pakistan, a theatre command facing China, and a maritime theatre command given all the responsibility of the maritime, including the Andamans and Nicobar. However, as I said, that under the functional model, where we would like to have scarce resources grouped like the missile element, artillery element, cyber element, logistics, for that we can have separate commands which may not have evolved now but can come up gradually as we build up the resources. So therefore, 3 theatre commands, 3 theatre regional commands, and maybe 2 to 3 centralized functional commands which will support the theatre commands. That's what.
So you would propose a amalgamation of the geographical and functional command model?
Yes, it has to be that the 17 geographical commands or the regional commands of the 3 services should now be amalgamated only into 3 theatre commands, yes, Pakistan, China and maritime, and the centralized resources to be put under certain commands as we grow in the functional model.
That's it. Understood. So, between the decision-making authorities, we've seen very different approaches to the goal of theaterization. What do you think could be the correct approach to facilitate the changeover?
I can understand and sense your question that General Bipin Rawat was the first CDS of the country and he was given this particular task. He progressed with gusto and he was taking things forward, but there were certain people who were thinking otherwise or on a different line. Now General Chauhan is progressing the same thing, yes, and the very fact that the government has nominated the second CDS, it means that the government also feels that the process of theaterization has to go ahead. I would only like to say in this context one thing, that a consensual approach, yes, where you want to please all the stakeholders may not fit the bill. This is a new concept, this is a new structure, the country is evolving and there are many geopolitical dynamics. So I would feel that if the vision is correctly evolved, then it should be implemented in that and not go by a consensual, because then it will be an in-between solution which may not be very optimal. Now with this thing, I would like to give my view as to what could be the logical steps. I feel that whenever you do a job, the first job is to select a person who will enable the change. Here, the government, based on the Kargil Review Committee report, has nominated the CDS. He has been given certain parts to bring about jointness, integration, and he is the man who is heading the change. But I feel that at the moment, what is known in the open domain, that he is going to be the chairman of the Chiefs of Staff Committee, but possibly he has not been given as yet the overriding powers over the chiefs. The second is that he is possibly not yet given the operational command of the armed forces, and there are number of other things. So while he can put a plan together, but if I feel that if he is going to be dependent on a committee decision, then the things may not be functioning in the right direction. And tomorrow, if India has to fight a war, still if it is left to 3 or 4 different people, then the things may not be correct. So first step is enable the enabler. It means I am saying that the CDS has to be made more powerful, and we need not go by any other models, because I know there is a talk in the environment that in US, the Nicholson's Act,
Yes.
it took away the powers from the CDF and gave it to the government. But that was important because in the US, the theater command are global. They are given a global political mandate. It is not a military mandate, it's a
Yes.
political mandate. So therefore, the control of US theater commands may be essential to be retained by the government. But in India, where we are still endemic requirement is there, initially to facilitate things, I feel the CDS can be made all powerful, while he will always work under the directions of the government. So that's the first step.
Yes.
Now the second logical step comes is that there ought to be a document, there ought to be a philosophy, there ought to be a doctrine to take things forward. So I am now referring to the 3 documents. First is the National Security Strategy. That in this new emerging world, until the government comes out with a national security strategy, it does not give any subordinate entity the freedom to act towards it. So there is a talk that whether it should be secret and whether it should be in the open domain, that decision the government can take. It can be split. Some portion in the open domain and some portion can always be secret. But the requirement of a national security strategy exists. From the national security strategy will emerge the military security strategies. I am sure that people know that in the past, just about till 15-20 years ago, Pakistan was considered as the main enemy.
Yes.
We were very happy because we were conventionally very strong, and we always people used to talk that we will destroy Pakistan, we will bifurcate Pakistan into 2. But now the things have changed.
Yes.
We now have an emerging global power as our main adversary. Pakistan has gone to the second rung. So therefore, our military, armed forces have to change their aspirations. What can be done, what needs to be done, what can be achieved. So when you see all these 3 things, it means that there is a requirement of coining a military security strategy. Once both these documents are there, then only will you be able to visualize for yourself as to what should be our model of theaterization. What is the structures you want? How will they operate? What should be their span? And everything will emerge from these 2 things. So therefore, this is the thing. And along with this, one more point which may be taken is that at the moment, the Military Operations Directorate of the 3 services are separate. With theaterization, I am proposing, because now the game is whole of nation approach. It is not only the armed forces, it is going to be the various ministries which will come into play. And therefore, I would propose that there ought to be a national war center in which all the stakeholders of the government, right from the CCS down to the armed forces, everybody comes together, sits together, makes a plan, and then takes on the responsibility as assigned. Right? The third step should be how do we enable this change? Today, the 3 armed forces are having various elements, various establishments and everything. So the thing is that before the baby is born, it means before a theatre command is born, he would have to be supported from day 1. And therefore, the third logical step is that you bring about the changes. What changes? Headquarter IDS, which is going to be supporting the CDS and maybe the Chiefs of Staff Committee, has to be changed as required. From this will follow the changes to the service headquarters and the linkages between the 2. And the third thing which needs to be simultaneously done, that if we are talking about jointness, then we require joint training structures, joint logistic structures, joint everything. So it means the third step you undertake the change of headquarters or the restructuring of the headquarters, ideas and service headquarters, and simultaneously create the establishments for support, which also would involve certain administrative actions, like the government has very recently taken an enabling step, ISO, Inter-Services Organization, which would enable a theatre commander or a joint services commander to have administrative and disciplinary powers over everybody. So, number of such steps have to be taken before that. And the last step should be creation of a theatre command, because theatre command is a big step, but in a way a small step, because the forces which are there on the ground, they are already existing. No lower level changes are going to take place. It is only that a new orbit will be made as to which elements of Army, Navy, Air Force are being put under the theatre command.
Right.
So therefore, it will be and should be the last step. If we go in this particular sequence, I feel the benefits would be that right from day one, once the vision document comes out, it is approved by the government and given to the environment, there will no more be any talk of dissonance. Everybody will be bound to be by the document that this is what we want, and then you can always say that whether we can implement this change in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever the phases are laid down, it will be easy to implement.
So, last question before I let you go, General. We have seen over the past few years a promotion of indigenous production. The Prime Minister calls it the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. Is the ANBI and theaterization linked in any way?
Okay. Atmanirbharta and Make in India, these are two things which are being talked about in the environment. Rightly so. That as we are growing, so whether we are progressing to a multipolar world, or whether we are now saying ultimately there are going to be two poles, one the US and the West and another as Russia and China, bipolarity in some way. But the thing is that with dwindling resources, many other problems coming up, there is an element of competition, contestation which has emerged. So it means that the freedom of acquiring things from anywhere, anytime is going away. Earlier, we were largely dependent upon Russia. That has dwindled. Over a period of time, we are now looking towards the West because of various factors. But the underlying fact remains that nobody wants to share the top-end technology, which is so important for fighting modern warfare. Therefore, if we continue to remain dependent on others, we possibly will not be able to look after and meet our own challenges, and neither may be able to grow as an aspirational, regional or global power. Therefore, this initiative which the Prime Minister has initiated, it's a very good step, but its execution needs to be monitored. Why I say this? That you can say that, like I'll take example of defense, you can say that these are the 1,000 items hypothetically we get from abroad. In the first 2 years, we will not get these 200 items. In the second year, we will not get another these 200 items. Restriction list which have been coming. But the whole thing is that we should be looking at the critical components. Like when you say that we are making an aircraft, but if the engine and avionics, which are the main things, if we are not able to get that technology, we are nowhere. We are only making a khaka. Similarly, for army equipment and for the naval equipment, if we are not getting the power systems for the ships, if we are not getting the radar systems and this thing within India, or we are continue to remain dependent, we can continue to say that we have reached 50% Atmanirbharta, but that might be only the cokas. The 50% which is the crux still remains outside. So, it is a very good initiative, but we should keep a balance that we should also go for acquiring technology. Whether we get a transfer of technology, whether we do it on our own or whatever we do, but the focus should also be a timed approach to acquiring Atmanirbhar. I think that meets it.
So, General Yadav, you've given the viewers a comprehensive analysis of theaterization. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening out. Thank you.